So let's start. Hello, everyone. This is the Kubernetes SIG cluster lifecycle cluster API office hours on the 16th February. We are abiding to the CNCF code of conduct, so please be nice to each other. If you want to talk, please use the raise hands feature. If you have anything you want to talk about, just add it to the bottom of the agenda. If you don't have access to that document, you can join the SIG cluster lifecycle mailing list, which is here, but you can just Google it. So let me see if I forgot anything. Yeah, last point. Yeah, you can add yourself here to that handy list if you want to. Good. So let's start. Yeah. First point, open proposals readout. So apart from, I think we have one of those topics already down in the agenda, but does anyone want to talk about any of those proposals? Yeah, Matt?
Thanks. I just wanted to mention on the machine pool machines, we're still obviously looking for any feedback anybody has. This week, Jonathan Tong pushed a few fixes to the proof of concept Docker implementation. And I also put out a pull request for cluster autoscaler that supports machine pool machines behind a feature flag. So hopefully those make it clearer if you want to look at the PRs as well.
Perfect. So
that's all. Thank you.
That one here. Yeah, thank you. So if folks have time, please take a look. Okay. Then next point. Does anyone? Okay, so for Fabrizio, very good. Does anyone want to introduce themselves? Feel free to just unmute yourself and speak up. I'll wait a bit. Okay, then let's move on. Fabrizio, you're first.
So, hi everyone. First of all, I apologize if I've put too many topics in agenda, but yeah, that was on my mind. Feel free to move them down or postpone to next week. So first one is really short. I would like to thank you, Rashari and Yuvaraji, for submitting a CFP about cluster API for the cluster for the maintainer track at the next KubeCon. So thank you very much. Can I move to the next one?
I think so. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this is a quick summary about yesterday's discussion about CRS add-ons, CRNs and add-ons. The meeting minutes about this meeting are down in the same doc, and also the link to the recording, you can find it just down this meeting notes. And TLDR is that there is a general agreement that cluster API should not invest too much in add-ons management. Instead, we should make cluster API user capable to somehow to rely on the tools that they like and they are using for everything, like Helm, KApp, or Argo CD, or whatever. So we should not reinvent the wheel. This is the general agreement. And the key point is that in order to decide the next step, CPI and CSI migration of 3 are basically the P0 that should drive our next decision. And so we should understand if what we have today, CRS, is enough to manage this migration. If not, what are the gaps, and if we have enough bandwidth and time to go for the next solution, or if we have to figure it out a tactical solution with small improvement on CRS. Banking a little bit back in CPI CSI discussion, I remember in the past Yassine and Cecile volunteering to take a look at the problem and provide feedback. So I ask if they are still on this task, and otherwise we have to figure it out how to get to a conclusion that basically provide a summary of what all the majority of the provider need to have.
Yep. Yassine first.
Stop.
Oh. Only Yassine.
So yeah, I did take a look at this, and yeah, so far CRS solves only half of the problem. So if you have newly created clusters, all providers can update their cluster templates to ship in CRS with CPI and CSI. We are currently already doing that, for example, in the vSphere provider. But it's only half of the problem, because for brownfield clusters, this doesn't solve the issue, because we need somehow to get CPI and CSI installed on the cluster. And today, when cluster cuddle upgrade, when you use the upgrade flow, we don't have a way to actually install those CRS. So a solution can potentially be that on upgrade, cluster cuddle can look for a file that contains all of the CRS that you want to, and apply those how needed. So it's there's that. There's also the other option that I was looking into, which is documenting an upgrade path. But when I started looking into that one, it doesn't cover basically folks that would just upgrade their clusters, or that have for example, an upgrade after statement where they run periodic rollouts or upgrades and whatnot. So the CRS is only half of the picture. So we need something, we definitely need something else. We either be it an integration that is built on top of installing CRS or something else.
Thank you. Is this work in some document in some issue or in some document that we can rely on?
Not yet. It's been mainly exploratory for this week. So I think we have an issue in CAPI. I'll add a summary on this, and then we can decide on that one.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, thoughts, concerns? I don't know. Jason, yeah, Sissy first. Yassine, you still have your hand raised. All right.
That's normal.
Yeah, just basically everything that Yassine said. And also another consideration is the versioning of the external cloud providers is tricky, just because they have a support matrix with the Kubernetes versions. And so that means we need to make sure that whenever Kubernetes is upgraded, the cloud provider version is also upgraded. Right now, it's kind of on the user to be aware of that and take care of that, but that's not a very user-friendly way to do it. So we're also exploring the CRS way in CAPZ right now. Jack Francis has a PR open to try to switch our test templates to all use external cloud provider by default using CRS. But it's a very static way of doing it, and it works for bringing up a test cluster and deleting it right after, but it's not a good cluster lifecycle experience.
Let's just say probably good enough for tests. Okay, Yassine?
Yeah, I think that last one to what Cecile said regarding this, the static fact. So I think that yeah, in general, we shouldn't, as y'all said, try to reinvent the wheel, but we probably should work with the APIs that we already have and try to build something on top of it that would make the user's life easier, especially when using things like cluster cuddle. Because if you're using pretty much all the stack, you'd expect everything to work out of the box.
Yeah, I agree with all the concern. We discussed some on the same line yesterday, versioning, and versioning is tricky because some add-ons are linked to the cluster lifecycle, some other not. And we also discussed what if we have to do small improvement to CRS. So the major concern from Vince that is not here today was that if we invest in CRS, then we are basically creating an API that we have to support longer. So it's just a matter to evaluate P0 and the priority of the stuff. And so I think that if we can wrap up everything in a document, then we figure it out how to act and try to act as fast as possible. I saw a question in the chat about cluster add-ons project. So the cluster add-ons project, I know they are experimenting something. They are experimenting something in KOps. We asked at the SIG meeting to have some document, some evidence how this is working, but we are not getting them, at least in the short term. So I think that we, at least for this upgrade, we are on our own.
Yep, let's see.
Do we have like any documentation or warning that says that we currently do not support upgrading out of the box in 123?
No, probably the reverse. We have a version matrix which says we support up until 123 in even in 1.0 and 0.4. And I guess it's kind of true for core cluster API, right? I mean, in CapD it works, but once CSI, etc., comes into the picture, and I think there are some things enabled per default, some clouds. I'm not sure if we then already have problems or.
Yeah, like CSI migration is enabled by default. So yeah, in general, like if we break volumes, we shouldn't claim support for that Kubernetes version. Yeah.
Let's add a note on the support matrix, because let me say this goes on mostly into provider specific stuff, and we should highlight it. I agree.
Yeah, just add a few steps here. Does it sum it up correctly? Just paraphrasing a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and Sidaf wrote in a channel that I think immediately after upgrade, nothing's broken yet, but it sounds like it will break later on. If I got that correctly. Okay, any other comments? Otherwise, it sounds like we're moving to the issue, essentially. Okay, Dan, Fabrizio, next topic.
So last week I brought up the some updates on our support matrix. So we have 1.0 branch that is already out of support, 0.3 branch that is going out of support end of basically next week, 0.4 branch that is going end of support of April. And what I was proposing is to give a grace period of 2 months where we continue to issue basically monthly patch on this branch if there are cherry picks that makes this necessary, and then after that we will consider only emergency patches if the maintainers decide that this is worth to. And also in this branch, we are not basically adding support for any new Kubernetes version. I did not get feedback on this after this discussion, so I am assuming that this is fine for everyone. So this is I kindly ask if there are objections, otherwise this is basically what we are going to do. Jason is asking, confused why 1.0 support because there is 1.1. So we are continuing to support the one series, but not the one series, but not the 1.0, because that was at least what we decided at the beginning. Yeah, and Cecile is pointing out the idea was to support one minor for each API version. And that's half for the story. The second half is that we are going still to support upgrades for V1 Alpha 3 to V1 Beta 1 and so forth. There is no clear decision how we are going to drop this, so I'm postponing this to the next basically cycle.
Good. Any comments, concerns available? Okay. Then let's move on. Vinny, Richard, I'm not sure which one of you two.
Yeah, I'll pick up the discussion. Can you please open the issue? Yes, so to give a brief summary of this issue, so I'm actually working on adding cluster class support for EKS, which is the managed service, and encountered an issue. And for people who are not very familiar with the EKS in Kappa, since it's managed service, we are using our own control plane provider, now our own bootstrap provider. So instead of KCP, we have what we call AWS managed control plane in Kappa, so that's counterpart. So when I created this cluster, my EKS cluster 2, I expected there is only one AWS managed control plane, but it turned out there are two, and I was like debugging this. And the issue is that for EKS, we don't have a separate, we don't have separate like KCP and like say like Docker cluster. We have only one that's used for both. So if you look at here, like we need to use this AWS managed control plane template for both control plane and infrastructure reference. And I think this is the use case, cluster class implementation is not supporting yet. So with this issue, we actually start having discussion about like what managed the, from my understanding, there are only two managed service in CAPI ecosystem. One is EKS, the other is AKS, and they are implemented differently. So we've been talking about like what's the expectation from CAPI, and Richard Case, who actually implemented EKS in Kappa, Richard has actually some questions, opinions. So for the discussion.
Who wants to say something? Yep, Richard, go ahead.
Yeah, I just give some background. For EKS, we don't need separate. We originally had a cluster object or a cluster of a kind, but that was basically just a pass-through to satisfy the contract. Fundamentally, our cluster and the control plane are one in the same. So we did choose the wrong one to name it, actually, in hindsight. That is one issue, and that's confusion, but we don't need two separate resource kinds and two separate reconciliation loops fundamentally. So we did remove one and we specify them both as the same reference. But I guess, we can go back to it, or if we only need to supply a cluster object, we can just not supply the control plane. That might also fix it. But yeah, open to suggestions.
There's some thoughts on it.
Sorry, and also probably the bottom comment there is, so there is talk about adding GKE support into CapG, and the work's starting soon. So I added the comment down there about, I don't remember ever a discussion around what managed Kubernetes services actually look like in Kubernetes. We sort of just try to make them fit, and maybe it doesn't naturally fit, or we need to make some changes.
Okay, Fabrizio.
So I did not have chance to investigate this properly, but yeah, on top of my mind, the first reaction is that cluster infrastructure and control plane they serve to two different concepts, and we have different expectations. So if I think to cluster API today supports requires a cluster infrastructure, does not require control plane. But if I look at cluster class, if you want to take full benefit of cluster class, like for instance supporting arrays, you need a control plane that support certain control field, like for instance versions, status version, and stuff like that. So given that, I think that the easiest part is that, okay, I understand that for this provider, a cluster infrastructure, we don't need both, we need only one. But I think that having a dummy infrastructure provider that just returns immediately infrastructure ready or control plane endpoint, so we'll make the entire process smoother for everyone, instead of making this exception the rule. So this might got a reaction, but yeah, I have to look at this more deeply.
Richard?
Yeah, that's basically what we had initially to satisfy that contract. But then we thought, well, it sort of seems pointless maintaining two sets of code. Plus, there was this weird scenario where the control plane is responsible for creating the endpoint. So then we had to then communicate that back to the managed cluster, so the managed cluster could then communicate that back up to the cluster object. So we had this weird dependency between the control plane and the cluster for reconciliation purposes. But yeah, happy to relook at that if that's the easiest option.
Okay. Fabrizio, you still have your hand raised, but not sure if it's intentional.
No, just want to say, yeah, let's rally on the issue and find if we find a way forward, and also we can generalize the problem given GCP and all the other providers. So yeah, happy to work on this. Thank you for raising the issue.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to see how the different clouds compare, how they are each, which abstractions they each have for managed clusters, and what we can fit that into. Interesting. Okay, so there's apparently also PR in CapC to remove Azure managed cluster. So it sounds like it's a good discussion to have. Although that looks okay, still going on. Yep, Alberto.
Hey, yeah, I haven't had the chance to look at this issue yet, but can you please clarify again, why are you referencing the control plane template into the infrastructure reference?
So I think I can provide some context. So when you create a regular cluster without cluster class, just plain clusters with EKS, then you create one AWS managed control plane, and you create one cluster and use your control plane and reference it both as cluster and as control plane, because it confirms to both contracts. So it fulfills both contract with one resource. Now looking at cluster class, both of those things are mandatory. You can't just leave one of them out and nothing happens. We expect both of them. So you have to put something there, and the only thing you have is an AWS managed control plane currently. So that's why the only way to get that cluster class to actually get created through webhooks, etc., is to specify both of those. So I think that's the only reason why they are now here at the moment.
Okay, I wonder if referencing regular AWS cluster template using the externally managed annotation would help there. But again, I need to look at this.
Yeah, if I got the externally managed thing correctly, then the idea of externally managed is that you still have the resource, but someone else manages it. But whoever manages it also has to set a status on that object, on that cluster, yeah, because it still has to confirm to a contract. So I'm
yeah, exactly.
Sure
you need you need to somehow satisfy the contract. Yeah, but you can do that out of band.
I'm not sure if it makes a difference to the small shim or whatever AWS had before, because I mean at that point you don't have certified contracts too. It's just we want to create some stuff, but it later has to convert to that contract, and you probably need a controller to do that if you want to provide it as couple. But okay, I get a point. I guess we'll do some async for discussion on that issue, which makes sense, I think. If there are no other comments about it. Okay, looks good. Then Jacob, Fabrizio, not sure who wants, or is there?
This is a point from Jacob that we discussed in Slack, but he cannot join the meeting, so okay. I'm acting in, as Jacob, and he started a good discussion related to the IPAM proposal. In the IPAM proposal, basically is introducing the idea of an IPAM provider. And so the next logical question is that how do we install the IPAM provider with cluster cattle? Should we add a new category of provider and so on and so forth? It is an interesting discussion, probably also relevant for the discussion on ODA DON that we had at the beginning. So if someone is interested on as opinion, please go on the issue and provide feedback.
Thank you. Okay, moving on. Christian, I think you will want to share your screen. So
yeah, hi. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, I'll give you a co-host.
So
I think you can only share one window just in case that's relevant, because it's yeah, you can try. I'm not sure how it's set up here.
Okay. I could share one screen. That's fine.
Okay.
So it should be visible now. So hi again, everyone. I just wanted to do a short demo about the small project cluster API state metrics. We did announce it some weeks ago, and we had Mercedes-Benz did publish it to GitHub. We already had some feedback, which was to, yeah, a short demo would be great. And yeah, so here I am today, and I'd like to show it. So for everyone who never heard of it, the goal is to provide a metrics endpoint for Prometheus, which has data from the cluster API CRs. similar what kubestate metric does for the core Kubernetes objects. Yeah, as of now, it only implements metrics for core cluster API CRs, but in future, maybe it makes sense to extend it to provider specific CRs too. Yeah. Okay, so it's published in GitHub at Mercedes-Benz Cluster API State Metrics. I also added a link to the document for reference. And I just want to show, give a short demo. I have deployed here a Docker or capd cluster in kind. And now I will just start the cluster API state metrics locally on my machine, and it will connect to the kind cluster and start providing the metrics for this capd cluster. So let's wait until it starts up, and immediately we're able to call the metrics endpoint and get some metrics like but for the details here, let's do some poolmant from QL. You can scrape all the data about, or some data about the cluster status, for example, or the cluster information, like labels which are set exactly the same like kubestate metric does. We also have the exact same flags for cluster API state metrics because we just reuse libraries from kubestate metrics, which, yeah, it's pretty great and pretty lightweight then at the end. We have some information here like when the cluster CR got created, the status phase information, and as you can see, it's currently in provision state. Same for conditions in this case. There's also already merged a pull request which shows the paused state of a cluster object, and same for all the other core KPI objects like kubeadm control plane, machine set, machine deployment. Let's take a short look at the kubeadm control plane. Here we can see it's kubeadm control plane and the default namespace and running version 1.23.3. For better visualization, I prepared some queries on Prometheus. So this is exactly the same cluster, which, yeah, was scraped by Prometheus and with the data from cluster API state metrics while it got provisioned. For example, here we can see the KPI machine status phase metric, and we can see how the bootstrap of the cluster was. At the end, we had 6 machines here in running phase. This one is the ready condition of all machines. We can see it goes up until all 6 are in ready state. Another example would be the status replicas field of the kubeadm control plane. We can see here that it got ready one after the other, which is the normal way a kubeadm control plane gets up. Yeah, and and this one is the phase of the machine deployment here. So we can see the blue part is when the machine deployment was in phase scaling up, and the yellow part is when it's in phase running. So when it finished the provisioning. I think yeah, we're currently using it mainly for alerting. We don't have any fancy dashboards. We already got some feedback on adding a Helm chart to the repository. Yeah, all in all, there's an open issue on cluster API, and I think we wanted to engage on that with this proposal, this tool. I don't know if it makes sense if the discussion goes further on there to provide the code or contribute it to the whole project if this is wanted and accepted by the community. But I think that's it for now. If there are any questions.
Let's see. So Fabrizio was first.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for the demo. I think this is great, and I like there are a couple of things that I like. First of all, I like that these metrics are built on top of our API, and this is a great way to validate our API, provide all the information that are required to operating a cluster. And so this is, I really like it. I also like the idea that this is a kind of add-on that we can have and separately. This makes cluster API modular. It keeps the metric problem out of core. In the past, we had some problem due to memory allocation for metrics. So yeah, there are generally, I really like the idea. Personally, I would like to see this in the SIG, under the SIG umbrella, where yeah, everyone can contribute to it. But that's my opinion, and let's give room to the others.
Yassine next.
Yeah, I think this is very much great. I think we definitely need something like this to increase the observability of cluster API, and I can imagine pretty much this being augmented to also have a suite of all other components that, for example, handle cert expiry, or things that are like, for example, very specific to cluster API behaviors in terms of upgrades, or like, for example, okay, I have multiple clusters. How much of these are like in a given version or the other? So yeah, definitely interesting. I'm glad to see this.
Yeah, maybe one short point to I want to add. I just added some small metrics, like for KCP, we forgot to add the condition metric. So all we had to do was this small pull request, which is the documentation here, and the pretty generic way to add the information here, or the new metric to the to the tool. I think there's great stuff done in Cube State Metrics we easily can make use of here in this whole topic. Yeah, thank you.
That's great. Yassine, do you still have your hand raised, or again?
Another one.
Okay. Yeah, just my comment. I agree with everything Fabrizio and Yassine said. For me, it's also a way that we can just move the monitoring story along, essentially, and can also provide some things like sample dashboards, sample alerts, and best practices, essentially, to run cluster API. So we can do things like write alerts to detect when KCP rollout is stuck, for example, and just provide that. We currently don't have the metrics for that, but with the metrics and just looking at what we currently have with Tilt, it's just a matter of a few more dashboards, Grafana or something, a few Prometheus alerts, and we can share best practices about stuff like that. Okay, any other comments? Okay, then Fabrizio again.
Okay, so first one is about APR, about improving version documentation support. Some time ago, I opened an issue. I got very valuable feedback from, I remember, from Jason, from Cecile, and I tried to summarize that in this PR. The TLDR is that when we ship a cluster API version, we ensure support for a settled version, but at the same time, we try to keep support to the older version, even if they are not anymore supported upstream, and we try to ensure support for the upcoming, for the future Kubernetes version. This, I try to summarize everything. Please take a look and provide feedback.
PR is linked in the document. And Fabrizio again. apart from if they're no, doesn't look like it. Then Fabrizio again.
Okay, last one. Also last week we brought up that every time after a release we go for a periodic update for our project owner file. If you are interested in stepping up, we have our contribution letter documented, and reach out if you are interested. So far we had Stefan asking to become a maintainer, and we got incredible positive feedbacks. So if there are no objections, I'm going to merge this PR later today. And thank you again, Stefan, for your great contributions.
Yeah, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns? Please don't. Not just kidding. Feel free. Okay. Looks still good. Okay. Any last minute topics, words, other stuff? Okay, then I think we're done for today. See you next week. Have a nice week. Bye-bye.